Okay, in this tutorial, continuing on with the lessons, we're going to start taking our ship that we have moving around and we are going to start firing the bullets. So just a quick review. We went through the interface here, the menu system, clicked on the play, we got our ship out there, we got our ship moved around, constrained to the stage size, and now we're going to start firing the bullets or the lasers out of the ship. So let's get into our code. And again, starting up at the top of our code, dealing with our variables. We are going to need some variables to help our ship fire the bullets. So now the bullets that we're firing, if we look into the library, I'm going to be using the mylasers_MC movie clip. In our previous videos, we went through and set up the linkage. I'm calling it mylasers. So that becomes its instance name. Again, we're kind of creating a class in here with the linkage, but we're not creating a class file. This is just a way that will allow Flash to talk to the movie clips and items within our library. So starting at the top, let's make some comments. Player lasers. And we're going to go through and create some variables. Again, the first variable is going to be a bullet number. And this is going to equal a number. And how many bullets do you want your ship to be able to fire at one time? So I'm going to go through and say about 15 bullets. That's his max. Once he runs out of 15, he's going to have to wait until they are off stage to fire again. You could also use this to go through and maybe he has to have ammo pickups, things like that. There's a lot of different ways of programming this. This is the way I prefer to do it. So if you prefer a different way, you can find other tutorials to go through and allow you to fire bullets or lasers. So need to create another variable here. I'm going to call this current bullet. And with this, it's going to be an integer or int, int. And it's going to equal 0. Another variable, I'm going to do aim x. And this is going to be an array. And again, an array you can think of like a music CD. You got one CD, but you have several songs on there. Or a list. You have one list, but there are several items within that list. And with this, we're just going to equal a new array. Next, we have aim y. And again, this is just going to be an array. And it's going to equal a new array. And our last variable, we're going to call this bullet space. And again, this is going to be an array, and it is going to equal a new array. Now, that we have that, we need to bring our bullets onto the stage so our ship can actually see them. Now, since we're bringing out so many bullets, that's why we need these arrays to tell us what bullet has been fired and is on stage, what bullet is off the stage. Now, to bring these out on the stage, since we want 15 different bullets, we're going to bring them out one at a time going through a loop. So we're going to use a for loop. So for parentheses. Within that, we need to create a variable. When we're creating variables for loops or even while loops, usually you see the letter I, the letter L, things like that. I like using the letter that represents what I'm bringing out. So I'm going to use B for bullets. This is going to be a number, and it's going to equal 0 to start. Semicolon, space. As long as B is less than our bullet number. Semicolon, B++. End your parentheses. Open curly bracket, close curly bracket. So basically what we're doing is we're creating a condition up here. We're setting our variable and initializing it to 0. Then we're checking our condition. If B is less than the bullet number, well, 0 to start out with is less than 15, so that's a true statement. As long as this is a true statement, what is within the brackets is going to be executed. At the end of that, it's going to add 1 to B. So B++ adds 1 to that variable. So what do we want to do? Inside here, I'm going to create another variable. I'm going to call it bullet temp. Bullet temp is a movie clip. So what is it that we are bringing in? Well, I want my bullet temp to equal the movie clip, which is a new My Lasers. And again, we're using the new My Lasers is that linkage name out of the library. So My Lasers, new My Lasers. Make sure it's spelled exactly the same. Capital letters, lowercase letters. No spaces are allowed. Now we need to give this a name. Since we are using so many of them, and when we're going through our for loop, we're starting at 0 and going through 15 times. So we're going to have 0 through 14. So we need to give them names. I'm going to say this square bracket, not the curly brace, double quote, bullet, double quote, plus B, square bracket. What this is doing is concatenating these two together. So it becomes bullet 0 the first time through. And this is going to equal the bullet temp. And then we're going to do an add child. And I'm just going to copy this line right here. Parentheses, put that in there, parentheses. So we're going to add that. What that does, it takes it out of the library and adds it to the stage at 0, 0. So that top left corner of the stage is where it is going to place that, right up here. Wherever that registration point is, and that's setting right here with that registration point, that's going to become 0, 0. We'll talk about that registration point here in a little bit as well, because that's very important as well. So it's going to add that to the stage. Well, I don't want to see those on the stage all the time, so I'm going to tell my bullet.x to equal a negative 100. Move it off in the x value to a negative 100, so it sets off the stage. Then I'm also going to take it on its y value and do the same thing, make it equal a negative 100. So I know it's off the stage on its x and y values. Okay. So if we check this out, let's check our syntax, make sure we don't have any errors, and Control Enter to test this. Let's play it. And if I increase this a little bit so we can see out here, and let's go ahead and bring that down so we can see that. You can see I got my bullets sitting right up here, sitting off of the stage. Okay, there's 15 of them stacked on top of one another. Okay, so now we need to start moving these along when we want to fire them. So to fire these, I'm going to scroll down. I'm in my game loop now. We're going to scroll down where we have our move ship. And then right down here at the bottom of this, I'm going to add a line of code and say if my space key is true, what do we want to do? Well, I'm going to call a function called fire bullets. Okay. Now again, with this function, I'm calling a function here, just like you would up here with that add event listeners, but we're not using an event listener. So I'm just calling that function off on its own. So I'm going to come right after the end of the game loop. Let's create a function. I'm going to call this fire bullets. Don't need anything within the brackets or within the parentheses because we're not passing it anything. Void because we're not going to return anything from it. Open and closing curly brackets. So within that fire bullets, since we have 15 different bullets, again, we're going to need a for loop to go through each one of those individually. So a new variable, and I'm going to use FB this time, fire bullets, that's the function name, so I like using the first letters of those in the variables. Again, this is going to be a number equal to 0, semicolon. If FB is less than the bullet number, semicolon, FB plus plus. Just like before. You see, this is just going to become a repeating pattern off of this. Now within my for loop, I'm going to check. So if my condition, this bullet, and with this, again, it needs to be exactly the same as it was above, except we're going to use FB because that's referring to that bullet number. Dot X is greater than a negative 100. That means it's on the stage. We've fired it. It's sitting out on the stage somewhere. So we don't want anything else to happen. Okay. So basically, I'm just going to put a comment in here and say do nothing. Come right after that and say else, open, closing. So let's go ahead and start commenting some of these closings. So closing for function. Put a comment here. Closing for loop. This way we don't get confused on what is what down here with our closing brackets. Okay. Because we are going to use a lot going through these over time. Okay. So now, if it's on the stage, we don't want to do nothing else. We want to bring it out onto the stage. So I'm going to tell my current bullet to equal FB. And I'm going to tell my FB to equal the bullet number. Make sure we get that lowercase in there. Okay, so if it's on the stage, do nothing else. We're going to switch these around. So our current bullet is going to equal whatever FB is at that time. And then FB is going to equal that bullet number that is being brought out. Okay, now coming after the for loop, but before the closing of that function, we're going to say if this bullet plus our current bullet now dot x is less than a negative 50. That means it's still off the stage somewhere. It's less than negative 50, so it's probably setting at a negative 100. I'm going to tell my aim x or square bracket current bullet. Because remember, aim x is an array. Those square brackets represent an array. I'm going to make that equal to my ship x. I'm actually going to copy this right here out of the if statement so I don't have to type that over and possibly make a mistake. So we're going to copy that and say dot x equals the ship dot x. Remember that ship dot x is the player ship that's on the stage. Its instance name. Let's paste again. Dot y is going to equal the ship dot y. Okay, I'm going to come down here, comment. Let's just say end if on that. And then we have our end function. So let's go ahead and check this. No syntax errors. Okay, that doesn't mean everything's correct. We still might have a misspelling out of here. A lot of times I like to put 3 R's in here for some reason. So we could still have other errors, but let's go ahead and test this. Don't have any errors coming out. So I can still move my ship around. But now I'm going to come out here to the right and hit my space bar. You can see my bullets are coming out however many times. So there should be 15 of them sitting here on the stage. So again, let's just check this real quick. See if I can hit the space bar one time without hitting multiples. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because there's 2 there. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So there's 2 there, a couple up in here, so there's 15 bullets. So we got them out onto the stage. Now we need to tell them to start moving down range. Okay, so let's go after this function, before our watch keys function. Let's create a new function. I'm going to call this move bullets. Again, void. We're not going to return anything from this. And again, we need another for loop. So variable MB for move bullets. It's going to be a number equal to 0, semicolon. MB is less than our bullet number, semicolon, MB plus plus. So again, if you want to go through, comment these so you know what's what. You can keep everything in sync. Go ahead and do that. So inside our for loop, we're going to say if my aim x square bracket MB square bracket exclamation point equals. That just means not equals. That exclamation point is not. So does not equal undefined. Notice undefined comes up in blue. That means it's a reserved word for Flash. Anything that comes up blue in here by default is a reserved word. Anything comes up green is a string. Anything that comes up red is considered a conditional statement. So if my aim X is undefined, I'm going to tell this bullet plus MB this time within the square brackets dot X to plus equal 15. That's going to send it down range. Okay. So we're going to tell it to start moving from the left of wherever it was shot from to the right. Going to go right after this and say else, open, closing brackets. And again, I'm just going to copy and paste this here. Dot X equals a negative 100. So either move it downrange or move it off the stage. One or the two. Now staying within the for loop this time, but after this if condition, we're going to set up a new if condition. So if the bullet dot X is less than negative 50, or the two pipelines, remember that's holding the shift key, and just above the enter key, that you got that slash, but holding that shift puts those two pipelines. That's an or. This bullet dot X is greater than, let's say, about 810. That means it's moved off the right hand side of the stage. So again, if we check our stage size, my stage size is 800 by 600. So basically, if it reaches this side over here, it has gone off the stage. So let's go ahead and move it off the stage. Or if by chance you're firing the other way, it can go off the stage as well. Okay. So if those happen, I'm going to tell my X value to equal a negative 100. And I'm also going to tell my aim X MB to equal 0. Okay. Again, let's check our syntax. No errors. Let's go ahead and test this. Okay, so now as I move around, well, nothing's happening. It's still just kind of sitting there in place. Well, the only thing that is left is we need to call this function. We haven't called this function anywhere. So I'm going to call that function, or copy that function name. So let's just copy that function name and the parentheses as well. I'm going to come up in here right to the top of my move or my game loop. So right at the very top here, and I'm just going to paste that in there, put a semicolon. So my move bullets are going to be called all the time, over and over again. So now if we test, let's kind of come around. You can see we can shoot our bullets. They're moving down range. Okay, so if I increase this, you can see my bullets are sitting over here off on the right hand side, but there's my stage size. Now as I go, it hits that right hand side of the stage, they disappear and go back off stage. Now if I just sit here and hold the space bar down, I can shoot them all, but notice I can't shoot unless there's bullets to be shot. Okay. So that's shooting our bullets with our ship. Okay. In the next lesson, we'll start bringing our ships out onto the stage and getting them to fire as well. We're going to bring multiple ships out. So we'll see you in the next lesson.